And we are live. Welcome and good morning all to episode 3083 of the Survival Podcast. Wanted to give you an announcement straight out of the gate that I forgot to do yesterday about the rest of the week. Well, not really the rest of the week, Thursday and Friday, and then Monday next week. As many of you know, I will be speaking at Float Fest. The topic of my discussion will be build your empire while theirs crumbles. And it's not all good news. It's going to have to do with the fact that, their crumbling is actually their reason for the Great Reset. But just because they have a new plan doesn't mean you have to go along with it. But the implications of that for the Survival Podcast are Thursday, Friday, and Monday. You guys will have rewinds. I'm not going to tell you what they're all going to be about, but two of the three are going to have to do with guns. I'll tell you what those two are going to be about anyway. The other one will be a surprise for you. That'll be the one that comes on Thursday. So on Friday this week, we are going to have a rewind that I did about airsoft training with new material as to how airsoft training is more important in 22 than it was in 2016 when I did the original episode for a variety of reasons. You'll have to tune into that rewind to find out what they are. And then Monday, we're going to have one of my favorite types of episodes to do and one of the favorite types of episodes of the audience over the years, stories from the past. A long time ago, I was a 14, 15, 16-year-old kid growing up in the coal region of Pennsylvania, running around with a 22 and a fishing rod and things like that, and taking my first deer with a bow and a bunch of other things. And I was guided by basically a lot of crusty old ass men, uncles, great uncles, grandfathers, to some degree, my father. And I'm going to tell you a long series of stories on Monday. An episode I think I did that episode originally in 2014 or 2015. And it was a very, very popular episode. And since I'm going to be gone and I didn't want to leave you with nothing, I'll be doing those. So that kind of gives us some time for people to come into the live feed that didn't make it yet. Because we have a good one for you today. We're going to be talking about something that occurred to me today when I was listening to an episode of Peter McCormack's What Bitcoin Did. And he was talking to one of his guests, and he was talking about how to get people who are not open to crypto and Bitcoin to become open, and combating things like climate change, FUD, and all types of stuff. And I was like, boy, I can cut through this a lot quicker. Because what we're really talking about is bringing people into the fold so they become defenders of a good thing instead of opponents to a good thing. And we do that not with logic and reason, which is explaining your case, because that doesn't work. We're dealing so often in today's world with Bonhoeffer's theory of stupidity, right? So logic and reason won't get through, but tangible connection is how you get through. You have to actually liberate instead of educate when you're dealing with the theory of stupidity. And boy, you'll hear all about that today in a couple of our segments. We're going to talk about the best life philosophy that I think you could ever adopt. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately because a lot of the problems I point to are directly attributed to the fact that this philosophy is actually given like verbal credence in our system of education. Teachers tell children this. They don't use the same words, but they basically tell them this. But then everything that they indoctrinate them with is counter to it. And then when you don't believe it, we get what we have today, which is people that want more from the government. They feel they need some sort of, financial justice done. These rich people need to give up what they have so you can have more, instead of understanding in an abundance economy, the way you get more is create more value. And it's going to make so much sense when I explain it. Next, I am going to tell you why I'm actually in favor of the state of Florida revoking Disney's autonomous zone, or whatever you want to have it. And I've been told by a fellow agorist who often is a genius and often is really short-sighted due to puritanical mindset that I'm wrong about this. Well, I don't think I am. Why I actually am for what Disney had for everybody, but if not everybody gets it, then Disney doesn't get it as a competitive advantage, because that is what we call the oligarchy using the state as a power mechanism. Okay. And next, another philosophy in life to adopt. You're going to not agree with this when you first hear it, I think, unless you're really going to think before you decide whether you agree with it or not. But it'll make sense, I think, when I explain it. And this philosophy, I'll give it to you now. You design everything except the consequences. I'm talking about your life now. You design everything accept the consequences. And I know people are going to think there's a direct correlation between action and consequence. There is a correlation, but it is not exact. And it'll make sense when I get there. I also want to talk a little bit today about why the people who most ask you for your trust are always those that deserve it the least. We've talked about that before, but I think it's a good day to talk about it again. And so, dun, dun, dun. And I haven't figured yet how to do sound effects when I'm live. I don't have mixer boards and all that. I have basic microphones and things like that. But I need the dun, dun, dun music. Jack was wrong. Elon Musk did it. I mean, the guy actually bought Twitter. And change is already evident. I'll tell you, could Elon win me over to Twitter and make me believe that it will be better and stay better? Yeah, there's some things I think that could be done that might do that. I don't expect them all to be done. However, I will tell you that there is change already evident, which is odd to me. It's odd to me because they're like, he did it. He bought Twitter. He didn't. The offer was accepted. It won't go through. The final ink doesn't go on the paper for about 6 months. But yeah, Sal's here. We'll talk about that in a second, Sal. Yeah. Elon doesn't own Twitter. Elon doesn't own Twitter. The ink doesn't get signed until about 6 months from now. But yet there's already change. I think because when you know the new boss is coming and there's a certain thing he wants, then maybe it starts to happen for all those people that say, I'm leaving, but they actually like their cushy, high-paid job, right? So maybe people start to do things a little bit. I don't know, but there's been some levers already pulled, and it's interesting, and I'll tell you about that. Then I'm going to ask a couple of questions from the audience. One was on choosing between aquatics and aquaponics, and why you really need to consider your own life to make that. It depends, but it depends mostly on you, what your resources, your budget, your area, your location, your goals, your time commitment are. All of those things are what it depends on. And I'm going to finish up today with why homesteading is the new counterculture. Sal Mayweather, we'll get to the segment. You might have missed it, Sal. It's like the third segment today. But he says he's here to hear me make excuses for Florida Republicans. Absolutely not. Don't care who did it. See, that's the problem. People are all up in arms because it was Republicans that did it. Don't care if Democrats did it. Don't care why they did it. I'm for it. I'm for revoking special privileges for one corporation over other corporations or individuals, especially when those corporations get to use the state as a hammer by having a competitive advantage, right? If it was open to all, that would be different. That would be different. Anyway, so let's start off with, I want to get somebody involved with Bitcoin and how that's exactly the way that I've been advocating for people to get people involved with gun ownership. And for the exact same reason, and that is, I believe 100% the right to self-defense exists as a human right, period. Right? And I believe that one of the best ways we can exercise that right is through the ownership of firearms. And I believe that it is wrong for government to take other people's property, period. And I don't want them doing it. And Sal's there yammering on about that right now. We'll get there, Sal. Relax. And I am a big believer that an armed society is more free than an unarmed society. And I think that the best way to defend that right is not through more laws or the repeal of laws directly. I think the most efficient route to that is to make more gun owners. If I have more responsible gun owners, I have a population willing to defend the right that it has to keep its property. Instead of having a special class of people that get to have guns and then everybody else doesn't, right, and creating some sort of tunnel for them, I want to spread gun ownership as far and wide as possible right now, because if I do that, we'll shore up gun ownership. Now, cryptocurrency is definitely coming under attack from various angles. And there's some people that really hate it. And the majority of the people that don't like cryptocurrency, and specifically Bitcoin, and are shrieking, Bitcoin's going to boil the oceans or whatever other crap they've been taught, They have no idea who the people that own Bitcoin are, what they're like, how diverse they are, how politically diverse, ethnically diverse, racially diverse, income diverse, etc. There's multi-billionaires that own Bitcoin, and there's people whose entire net worth, can be measured in the value of a shoebox, and they have a little bit of Bitcoin or some other crypto. It's a very actually common thing that people opposed to it invoke the power within Bonhoeffer's theory of stupidity. Okay? That's what they do. If we can make the population stupid, then no matter how articulate a person that is pro this idea that we're opposed to is, no matter how solid their case is, they can't be won over because they're literally sticking their fingers in their ears and going, la, 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 la. So what do you do with that person if it's a gun? This is not the way you get to onboard everybody. But if I could align the stars to have a perfect onboarding experience to a new gun owner, this is how I would handle it. I would have that person at least open to the idea. So I got to start with somebody that's at least open to the idea of learning more about guns. So I need somebody, if it's crypto, at least open to the idea of learning more about Bitcoin. And I would want that person to come spend some time with me before I took them to a safe place to discharge a weapon. And I would prefer that place be an active gun range with other shooters. And I want to do two things before I take them to the range. I want to teach them the general rules and the rules that are important to me as a gun owner and somebody that's going to shoot with them, like safety rules. These are all the things that I say you have to do if I'm going to go shoot with you, because I don't want to get shot in the head. And I'm actually going to put something like an airsoft gun or a blue gun in their hand when we do this. And we're going to go through the exercise. This is so I am more comfortable and they are more comfortable. I'm not sitting there in fear this idiot's going to turn around and pop me inadvertently. Okay. And they're comfortable that I actually care about safety. And then the second thing I'm going to go over the rules of the range. I'm explaining that there's going to be a range officer and there's going to be other shooters there, and they're familiar with the rules I just gave you, plus the specific rules of the specific range that we're going to. And that if you break those rules, it's going to be a problem. It's not safe, and we're going to get thrown out. And if we're going to go do this, we have to follow their rules plus the general safety rules. Okay? Then we're going to select a gun that's right for this person. It's not going to be a 3006 handgun, right? It's not going to be like the Remington XP100 in 3006 that's going to take their shoulder off when they shoot it. We're going to select something that's going to be comfortable for their first shooting experience. We're going to go to the range. We're going to put some rounds down range. While we're there, I'm going to introduce them to other people that I don't know. Because I don't know about you guys, but whenever I've been to a gun range, if I say, hey, how you doing? What kind of gun is that? What caliber is that? How are you doing? Do you like this range? Whatever. Like, I could say anything to anybody there that has anything to do with what's going on, and we have a conversation. And it can very quickly go to, so how'd you find this range? Do you live here? Who's your friend? Like, stuff like that. Like, and I'm not going to have this scripted. I'm going to just have this conversation. Oh, man, like, that's pretty cool. Like, eventually you're going to talk about, like, well, what do you do for a living or what have you? Or do you know any good places to hunt? Or have you been to any other ranges? And you're going to have a general conversation, hopefully with a couple different people. Now, the reason I'm doing this is, one, I enjoy this conversation in the first place. You meet new people, etc. But I want this person who's with me that has made a determination in their mind due to what they've been told by the media that every gun owner is some crazy person with, 57 AR-15s in a vault in their house, 3D printing guns like Sal or what have you, and they're all on the edge of killing everybody at one time. To actually realize, like, hey, look, there's a guy of a different race. There's a woman. There's an old man. There's a young man. There's somebody with their kids. The kids are actually following the rules just like the adults. Oh, look at this entire community of normal people that are basically just like me, that aren't afraid of this thing because they understand it and they follow rules. Okay? Then I want to take that person home, and I want to take that gun that we just used, and I want to teach them to clean it. I want to teach them to strip it down. I want to teach them to strip it apart. I want to make it all perfect to shoot again. I want to reinforce the importance of maintenance and care of the weapon. Some of you are already going, holy shit, this is onboarding into Bitcoin. It's the same thing. Yeah, it is. Gets cooler, right? Ideal situation. I'm so rich. I'm John Pugliano rich. I'm Sal Mayweather rich. After we've shot and everybody is comfortable, I say to this person, you have done well, young gun Padawan. I would like you to have this gun. It is for you now. You are going to be responsible for it. And they say, wisely, shit, I don't know if I'm ready. And I say, yeah, you probably shouldn't be carrying a gun yet. You probably need more training. And you probably shouldn't just go home and throw this thing in your nightstand. So what I'm going to need to do with you is we're going to get a way to safely secure this weapon when it's in your home, so that if somebody puts their hands on it that's not supposed to, they either won't be able to touch it or it won't fire. So I'm either going to come up with a trigger lock or a safe or some way to secure the weapon when it's not on your person. I'm going to set up additional training with you. We're going to go to the range again. I'm going to get you more comfortable. I'm going to hand you off to a higher level of education probably and have you take a handgun course so that you know how to carry, get you carrying, and tell you, you know what we need to do now? We need to get you a rifle. And that trigger lock or that small bedside gun safe or whatever that's, you know, you bio lock so that you just touch it and get your gun out, right? Like that's not going to be enough anymore. We need a gun safe or some other way to store your additional weapons in your own custody. And then hopefully at that point, I've done a good enough job that I've created a new responsible gun enthusiast, not just a gun owner. Now, if I've done that and I started off with somebody who was center left to left, really thought everybody should not have guns, but they were open to learning more, and I walked them through that experience, I now have a person who's going to defend the right to own a gun. Now, they may not move all the way on my end of the spectrum. They may say it's great that I went through all this, but I want the government to require a license that makes people do this. I'm not done yet with that person. That is not ideal to me. But if I move them from way over here on the spectrum to nobody should own a gun, all the way to there, have I not improved the situation for everybody? Well, maybe that person can then snap to the fact that this was all done in the private sector, including the course they took, and maybe instead of the government overseeing it, they can just require it. Now I've moved them a little bit more. I mean, I want them over here in the world of the complete and total free market. That's where I want them to be. But I'll pull, however far I can pull them this way. This makes it more difficult to take away a right to own a gun. Okay. Perfect onboarding experience for Bitcoin. You guys ready for this? What would I do? Well, I'd want to meet with you and talk to you about putting a little bit of skin in the game, something you're not that afraid to lose. $50. So then I'm going to set you up Coinbase, Strike, anything. You're going to buy Bitcoin. I know the purists out there saying, you should start a business and earn your money, and that way no one... I love it. I love it. I love that. You know what? I'm trying to get a person into Bitcoin. That person may be a person that's never going to be an entrepreneur. Most people won't. I'm not going to push a string. The only way to push a string, by the way, is wet it, put it in the freezer, and then you can push it. All other strings won't push. There you go. So that's not going to happen with this person. So I say, hey, you got a credit card, a bank account, whatever. Yeah. All right. Just like going to the range, I'm going to explain first the basic rules of safety with cryptocurrency, seed phrases and stuff like that. And I'm going to explain the rules of the range, the rules of Coinbase or Strike or whomever that you're tendering fiat for Bitcoin for. Yeah. All right. And I'm going to say, like, this is what, if you want to buy Bitcoin, yes, you have to give them your financial information if you want to buy it for dollars. And that's what you want to do. So let's do that. Yeah. Okay. Calm down. Some of y'all are chattering and you're forgetting all the rest of the story. Okay. Once that's done, then we're going to go on to Coinbase and I'm going to hold their hand. This is, again, an ideal situation. Now, if this was really an ideal situation, I would get them to go to a Bitcoin meetup. And I would actually have them doing this at the Bitcoin meetup. Or we're going to one right after we do it. Okay? And I want to introduce them around in the Bitcoin meetup. Now, why do I want to do that? Because anybody at a Bitcoin meetup is going to be receptive to conversation. We're there to talk about Bitcoin. And I want them to see, here's a guy that's a landscaper that makes $14 an hour, busting his ass, lower middle class, killing himself, trying to make a living, that buys Bitcoin. Here's some code bro that buys Bitcoin. Here's some rich dude that buys Bitcoin. I want him to see the same profile, which is actually going to be more diverse than the gun range. You're not going to see a lot of Joe Biden stickers at the gun range, but believe it or not, you may see a Biden sticker or two at a Bitcoin meetup. I want this person to realize that Bitcoin's for everybody. So now they've got their first Bitcoin. They've been to the range and they fired the 22 a couple times, right? Now I have to teach them to take the gun apart and maintain it. We're going to learn about software wallets. So just like when we give them the gun to take home, we say we need a way to secure the weapon. Okay, now we went to the range. We don't keep our guns at the range, do we? No! Screw that. And Sal, chill the fuck out, dude. Really. P2P exchange. Shut up. You're not going to do it with fiat. Anyway, besides, you like Bitcoin Cash. Go on with your life, man. We'll get to you in a minute, buddy. All right. I'm just playing with that, Sal. I love Sal. All right. So now we're going to teach them how to use a software wallet. Well, I want a Tracer or a Ledger. The guy has $50. I'm not going to have him spend more on a hardware wallet than he has in Bitcoin. Let's go download Exodus, dude. Let me show you how to do that on your phone. Now, remember I talked about seed phrases? You notice that you didn't have one at Coinbase? Coinbase is the range. Let's take the gun home. So now we're going to understand what a seed phrase is. And we're going to learn what a public and private key is. Now, let's take the money off the range and put it at home in a secure location. So I'm going to teach them how to transfer out of Coinbase or Strike or whomever, which takes seconds. It's actually a lot easier and a lot safer than a gun. And then they're going to have possession of the gun or the Bitcoin in this case, in a much more secure environment that other hands can't get. And I'm going to explain the risk. Just like if your kid gets the key to your gun safe, if someone gets the key to your phone, which on your phone might be as simple as your passcode, especially if you use the same passcode on your phone as you do on your software wallet, shouldn't do that. And I'm going to teach them how that works. And I'm going to show, hey, this isn't a gun. This actually is information. So let's get it on your computer too. Let's mirror that software wallet. Now check this out. Remember that phrase we wrote down? Let's stick it in this newly installed version of the wallet on your computer. The money's in both places at the same time because it's not really there. It's in the blockchain. We're going to explain that. Now we're going to create a Bitcoin enthusiast. Now we're going to talk about getting more Bitcoin. Now maybe now we'll start doing, DEXs and people to people and things like that, or starting a business or just accepting Bitcoin in your business or asking to be paid partly in Bitcoin. Or, hey, did you know that even if your employer says, I'm not going to pay you in Bitcoin, you can make them through a service like Strike, and there's other ones that do it. You can actually just fill out a different direct deposit form and have like 5% of your paycheck go into Bitcoin. And as soon as it gets there, you can put it in your software wallet. Okay, now they're starting to accumulate some sats, right? Okay, so they accumulate their sats and they're like, hey, I've got a few grand here. Yeah, let's talk about hardware wallets. Let's get you a gun safe. So now we teach them how to pair something like a Trezor with Exodus, be able to manage and see all of their crypto, but say, I'm going to keep a few bucks here or a few bucks there in Lightning or just generally spendable in Exodus. And the rest of it, I'm going to be able to view it in Exodus, but it's going to be secured by a second key in the system, which is a hardware wallet. Okay, at that point, maybe this person has not let go of a lot of baggage, but I'll tell you what they're not going to be for: getting rid of cryptocurrency. It is the exact same process, and it doesn't involve any logic or reason or explanation. It involves physical how and the empowerment. Part of Bonhoeffer's theory of stupidity is this: you cannot educate people out of stupidity. You have to liberate them out of it. Because when we talk about Bonhoeffer's theory of stupidity, for those that haven't heard us discuss it before, we're not talking about a person that's actually intellectually slow. The person could sound very, very, very smart. They can be very, very smart. They can have an IQ of 180, and they can still be stupid to a thing because they've been programmed by society to be stupid to the thing. Got it? That's what we're talking about when we say theory of stupidity. We cannot cure stupidity with education. We cure that stupidity, in Bonhoeffer's words, with liberation. By liberating you from not having power over the gun, I liberate you from the fear that they planted in your mind. By liberating you from your fear that Bitcoin is some big scary thing that drug cartels use or something. Like, I can sit there and say, yeah, sure, drug cartels use it. You know why? Because it's money. They use money too, right? Whatever you think of as money, they use. Like, I just, like, what actually spawned this one was that episode of, it was either McCormick's or Palm's podcast, coupled with Adam Curry making a comment on Twitter. So somebody, I think it was Peter McCormack, actually, said, hey, Elon, now integrate Lightning across all of Twitter. And Curry stepped in and said, don't you remember his rug pull, man? And I love Adam too, right? Like, I can disagree with somebody. I can mess with him a little bit. I can still love him. I love Adam Curry. I should have a picture of Adam Curry as the Podfather on my office wall. I'm going to do it. I'm going to put one up there. You know why? I fucking owe Adam Curry my career as a podcaster that's 14 years old now. If you're a podcaster, whether you know his name or not, you do too. The man created it. All right? So I'm not picking on him directly as a person, but this position is untenable to me. Like, basically, Twitter and Elon should have nothing to do with Bitcoin because Elon did a rug pull on Bitcoin, and Twitter is centralized and Bitcoin is decentralized. Sorry, Adam. Sorry. Bitcoin is the purest form of money, and I know he would agree with me on that. Okay? It is pure, hard money, not currency. Lightning creates a currency off of Bitcoin. That's how that works. So, if Bitcoin's for everybody, of course, bad guys use it, just like they use dollars or yen or pesos or gold or silver. Of course they do. That's the whole point. Just like bad guys use guns. But if I start the conversation with the holdout, well, of course, bad guys use guns. So do good guys. We're not going to get anywhere. Put the gun in the hand. Teach mastery of the gun. Teach safety. Expose them to the community. Let them see it for themselves. Let them become part of it. Then they'll defend it. That's crypto. All right. Next. One more, Sal, and we'll get to you, bro. All right. The best life philosophy you could ever adopt. All right. The best. No one uses. Sal, you don't know what you're talking about, dude. I used Lightning yesterday. Go away until we get to your thing. You're here for one thing, right? All right. So the best life philosophy you could ever adapt is what I have today is not what I'm limited to having. Teachers say this all the time with different words, right? Johnny, if you work hard and study hard, you can be anything you want to be. Oh, by the way, the ocean's about to cover your house. We had 10 years to act 20 years ago, so we didn't do it, and everybody's going to die. The baby seals are going to die, and you're going to die, Johnny. Your future's been squandered. You'll never be able to afford a home, Johnny. Your country's racist, Johnny. It's 100% racist across the board. You're white, so you're a racist, even though you don't know it and you're 7. By the way, you should probably cut your wang off and turn into a woman. I'm sorry, this is the agenda of the modern education system. You say one thing and you do another. That's what it is, right? These kids are being programmed into hopelessness. And then what happens when a person's hopeless? Anything that looks like hope, they'll grab onto. Let's say that you hated my guts. You wouldn't shake my hand. You didn't want a damn thing to do with me. Jack Spirko's not just a jerk. He's an asshole. Jack Spirko, I don't care what Jack Spirko says about not being a racist. He's a racist piece of shit. I hate him. He's a total scumbag. I despise the man. I wouldn't shake his hand if I had to. You'd shoot me before I'd do it. Let me tell you something. If that person is hanging by their fingers and they're white fingering from a building and they're about to fall 100 stories, and the person that shows up on the other side of that wall is Jack Spirko and he sticks his hand out, they're going to grab my hand. And when I pull them to safety, they're going to be my friend, at least up until the point that they're all the way up on the wall. See, the key is if I want to keep control of them, I want to pull them up enough where they stop fearing that they will fall, but they think if I let go, they're going to fall. That's how I control a person. Well, that's how control can be exhibited over a person. I'm not that guy. I wouldn't do that. So your government does. Make you feel just hopeless enough that they're the only answer. Yeah? Make simple. Easy to understand. If you adopt the philosophy, and this is something I've noticed that's common among people that become libertarians. It's common among people that are libertarians and don't know they are. And libertarians are not all anarchists. So all anarchists are libertarians, not all libertarians are anarchists. So when I use libertarian here, I'm not going to anarchy. It's also very common among anarchists. And both sides of the political dichotomy, and I'm not talking the politicians and the system behind the scenes, the man behind the curtain shit, talking about the average person who doesn't really know what's going on, but they said, I'm on Team Democrat or I'm on Team Republican. The people that do that on Team Republican are generally for more individual liberty than people are on Team Democrat, right? They also tend to be people that believe, even if they currently live in a trailer park or whatever, they believe that one day they can have more. They don't necessarily believe that one day they will have more. They believe if I do the right things for long enough and I work hard enough, I can get to a point where I have more. And even when I get there, I can do it again and I can do it again and I can do it again. That maybe I won't be the CEO of MicroStrategy and be buying Bitcoin by the hundreds or thousands, but I can do better than where I'm at. People that tend to side with government absolutely go the other direction. They're afraid if I let go of their hand, they're going to fall. And even if they don't like me, they're not going to let go of my hand. And if you will adopt the simple philosophy that where I am now is not an indicative of where I will be tomorrow, you will stop waiting for somebody else to help you. You will stop seeing everything as an injustice against you. You will stop seeing everybody who's successful is the reason that you're not. And you will stop thinking that you need people to redistribute things to create equity. And you might look a little bit more toward equality of opportunity rather than equity of results. Which brings us to what brought Sal to us today. Why I favor Disney stripping the self-government's power of why I'm fine with Disney losing their special privilege in the state of Florida. And Sal says this means I'm empowering government. Absolutely not. So to empower government would give government a power they don't have. So what we're talking about here is the power to tax and regulate. Are you taxed and regulated? Okay. So they already have that power. Within the state of Florida, are you taxed and regulated? Yes, you are. If I open up a corporation tomorrow, Jack's Fantasyland, where you go, you have to pay with Bitcoin and you shoot guns all day long, right? And Florida would be a good, if I'm going to do it in any state, it's going to be Texas or Florida, maybe Dakota, South Dakota or North Dakota, maybe, right? Or Nevada. Like those are the only, 5 states I'm going to think about opening Jack's Gun Fantasy World in, okay? When I go there and let's say I write a tweet to Elon Musk and say, dude, I think this would be epic. And he stops trying to program chips to stick in your brain to make you skinny for 5 minutes and says, dude, I agree. Here's a check for $5 billion. It's Fantasyland. It's okay. It makes my point. And I go to the state of Florida and say, I got $5 billion. I want to make Jack's Fantasyland of guns and Bitcoin. And they're like, tear ass, dude. And I'm like, well, see, I'm going to buy this kind of unused piece of land and I'm going to develop it. Can you let me be self-sovereign there? They're going to tell me to go shove my idea up my hairy butt. I'm not going to have that opportunity. So when we take an entity just because they're big enough and we say you can have this special classification of privilege that doesn't apply to your competitors, it's not about empowering the state. It's about that entity having the power of the state to suppress its competition. Now, if you don't understand that, it's because you don't want to. It's because you already live in a world in your head where we already have a stateless society. Well, we don't. There is what I want and there is what is. There is reality and pragmatism versus actual fantasy land. So if we can create a way where anybody that wants to can say, because I've taken this place, this swampland, that's Disney's justification. We took this worthless swampland that nobody was willing to develop, and we developed it, so we deserve this special dispensation. Now, I'll tell you, it's one thing if a government says, tell you what, this is interesting too. I bet Sal would have a problem with this. Let's say that Jack decided to open Jack's Fantasyland, and he went to Florida, and Florida said, Jack, you don't have to pay any taxes for 10 years. He probably said, that's bullshit. Why do I have to pay taxes and he does it, right? Now, if I can figure out how to do it in a way that anybody can do it, if I can create a blueprint for it, if I can gray market, black market it, if I can work the system against the state and say, you can do this too, well, then that's great. But if I go and I bribe a few Congress clowns and I get this special privilege, well, then that's not cool with the anarchist, right? But taking it away from someone who already did is also not cool with the anarchist. It's actually like bullshit. And he said, I knew he's going to say this shit. He's like, this is like standing outside of your house and claiming that it's bad that your neighbor wasn't raped because you were. No. It's not that I want Disney to be raped. It's that I don't want to artificially create a statist protection bubble around a supposed private entity, which is what this is. This isn't a private entity creating a private entity defense mechanism. This is the state granting the bubble, and it is allowing Disney to have an unfair competitive advantage against its competitors at the direct expense of the taxpayer. Now, one thing our friend Sal also said over wherever the hell this was, I thought it was Twitter. It ended up being Facebook. Somehow I got confused about tabs. I probably shouldn't even have made the comment because I don't generally comment on Facebook. But it's an interesting discussion, so I'm glad that I did. So when I look at it that way, all I can think of, I can't think of the gentleman's name now, but there was a really big black dude that was choked to death in New York, right? He was choked to death in New York. Now, why was he choked to death? Because he was selling loose cigarettes on the street. Now, did the cops drive down the road and go, hey, look at that dude selling cigarettes. Let's go arrest him? Nah, it's not what happened. Most of law enforcement, especially at that level, is what we call a complaint-driven system. That's what it is. So how come the cops even had the confrontation with the man in the first place? Because the dude that was having to sell cigarettes burdened by a tax in the store right inside from the street this dude was selling them on called the cops and complained. Why? Because he was put at an unfair disadvantage. Now, in this case, I'm actually pro Michael, whatever his name was. I don't think he did anything wrong. I think he should have been left alone. But now imagine that the city of New York picks 10 shops and says, you can sell cigarettes under the system, protected by us, without charging tax. Everybody else still pay your tax. That's Florida. That's Disney. It's been in place since 1967. Again, you can either see that or you don't want to. And it creates an unfair, unjust system that is not just because the world is not fair and the world is not just. And I get that. I'm okay with that. That's natural law. We'll get to that in another part of philosophy in a second. But when the state does it and favors one entity over the other, it is specifically for the case of dividing us. Now, I'm all for an autonomous zone program, right? If everybody has access to it, I think anybody that goes out and carves out something in the middle of nowhere and does it should be left alone. Should be left alone, period. But doing it for one entity over another with the power of the state, it's bullshit. It's total, complete bullshit. And you're right, Michael. It is Eric Garner that I'm thinking of in New York City. And that is what the people that run the state want. They want division. So I am for removing special protections for individual entities that are not available to all entities. That is not empowering the state. And as far as, so the other thing, Sal, is that that'll put more money in the public school system. I didn't think you were for that. No, it won't. No, it won't. Because whatever amount of money they want, they're going to print it. They're going to issue a bond. They're going to spend that shitty money in that shitty system anyway. The way you defeat the public school institution is not by defunding it. It's by depopulating it. You can cut funding to schools. There'll be another way that they steal money and bring it into the school system. It doesn't matter. It'll never stop. What stops it is when you pull your kids out. Anyway, moving on. Remember, if you have comments or questions for me at the end, put them in all caps so I can see them. Now, another philosophy of life to adopt, and this goes right into the world is not fair, the world is not equitable, and the world is not equal. And this is one that people are going to struggle with. I said it already. I'll say it again now. You design everything except the consequences. And I know what you're thinking. No, people get the consequences of their actions. They do, but they're not uniform. So let's think about this. The year's 2008. It's June. Financial crisis is on the way. Jack Spirko picks up an $18 recorder and a $20 busted-ass Plantronics headset, puts some duct tape or electric tape around it so it'll hold together and stay on his head, and starts recording a podcast called the Survival Podcast. 18 months later, he has a six-figure income, walks away from corporate America, and builds his podcasting empire. The year is now 2022. The date, April 26th. The time, 12:44 p.m. He's in front of you right now, podcasting live, not giving a fiddler shit what anybody thinks because he doesn't have to. It is completely possible that a guy named Jack Bauer, right? 24, dun, 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 right? Jack Bauer also has a 2006 .5 Jetta diesel TDI. He also has a Plantronics headset. He does everything Jack Spirko does. He puts his own personal stamp on it, but basically he talks about the same thing. He starts at the same time. He has the same work ethic. He too gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning to put his show together, drives to work, records on his way. He too has a great personality even. He's talented. It's totally possible that he does everything right and doesn't get my results or gets more results. That's what we refer to as luck. And people say luck is when preparation and opportunity meet. I agree. But luck still plays a role. Who you are, what you are, and how you apply yourself has a lot to do with how things up. Let's talk about a negative consequence, though. Because when I say consequence, I bet most of you think negative. When somebody hears the word consequence, they think you did something stupid and you got hurt. Okay? Well, consequences are not negative. They simply are the result of a thing or a decision. So the consequences can be good, not just bad. So the consequence of me making that decision was a complete independent income. Let's think about a negative consequence. Let's say that Joe drinks a half a fifth of vodka every night for 20 years, ends up in the ER one day vomiting blood, and they say, dude, you're an end-stage liver failure. Okay? Now, there's another guy named Tom. Tom does the same thing, and at 20 years, he has his liver enzymes checked, and they're not great, but they're fine. And his doctor says, dude, do this for another 5 years, and you will end up in end-stage liver failure. But you're okay right now. Quit drinking. And Tom does. Up to that 20-year point, they had the same behaviors. And because of one's genetics, their other nutritional components in their lives, who knows? Some combination of genetic and epigenetic factors. Tom gets to live. Tom gets a second chance. And whoever I said the first guy's name was, Bob, doesn't. He dies. He can't get a liver on the transplant list because no one will trust him because he's been an alcoholic his whole life. Now, so you don't design the consequences. You don't design the consequences. All you can do is design the best life you can to optimize the consequences that you're going to end up with. Now, if you don't understand that, that's another one of those things I don't think you want to. I think because there's a comfort in it if we're moderately successful in our lives, if our lives have worked out moderately well, that we can look at people who have not had our level of success and blame it all on them. And it's no different than looking at somebody with some sort of physical deformity of birth and seeing them in a negative light because it must somehow be their fault or their parents' fault. Well, it cannot be anybody's fault. It can just be random chance of how two people that made a baby, they, by the way, have to be a man and a woman. We got to go to at least that, right? So we got a man and a woman, and they make a baby. Now, if Jill made a baby with Sal, right? You got a little Sal Jill, and that little Sal Jill has some sort of massive deformity or something like that science can't correct, that's going to affect Sal Jill for the rest of Sal Jill's life. Now, maybe Jill goes out and makes a baby with Ron, and the baby does not have the problem. And Sal goes out and makes a baby with Deborah. Okay? And that child has no problems. Maybe Sal and Jill make a Sal Jill 2, same genetic base, doesn't have the problem. That person, by random chance, negative luck, if you want to call it that, ended up with some sort of physical challenge that they can't get rid of for the rest of their life. There are people, and this is something that we as anarchists or libertarians or Republicans or anything that's not all in government socialism, we need to be honest about this or we can't develop solutions for it. There are people that do most things in their life right? They do most things in their life correctly. And they still have negative results. And somebody else did the same thing and had very positive results. So when you accept that, then you realize the following. I design everything but the consequences, but I get to update my design based on the consequences. Now I'm actually a lifestyle designer. I think the problem, and I've been using the term for so long, and I've not explained this, and I think it's a failing on me. I should have explained this. So we think of design like this. I come to your house, I design a permaculture design for your backyard. I write a blueprint. Okay. You implement the blueprint. I do the design. You hire a landscape architect, and they don't really understand it, but they can read a print. They do everything I said. They put the Cornelian cherry where I said. They plant comfrey around it. They put a little garden pond over in here. It recirculates up this dry creek bed that now becomes a running creek bed. So I got 2 ponds. They're like everything is the way I said. You put in daffodils over here to attract pollinators. Everything is beautifully designed. It's done. It is not done. Either you're going to hire me as the designer to come back again and keep working on it, or you're going to take on some responsibility and you're going to practice a permaculture principle known as observe and affect and accept feedback. And you're going to see that, hey, even though this is a really great bee plant, I never see any bees on it. Does that mean my bee population is low? Well, this other plant over here has lots of bees on it. So there's bees. So either they prefer the other plant. If I want more bees, I need to put more of that plant in, or something is keeping those bees away. And I don't know what it is, right? So with that and that alone, I've realized the design must be continually updated. So if I do a really great permaculture design, the consequence is going to be abundance, lots of veg, great food, and a simple maintenance program. But if I stop there, I can put the same design in 2 backyards, 1 block away from each other, and I'll get different results. There's micro niches, and the person actually managing the system is different. This guy works 12-hour days, and this guy works 6-hour days. This guy likes to go in his backyard and do work, and this guy, he just wants it to stay nice. This guy hires somebody to maintain his system. This guy self-maintains and continues to study permaculture, even though the design's the same. Even though the designer is the same, the system itself is going to have variance. And so when we design our lifestyles, it needs to be, we're going to put the best plan in place possible. And then accepting a military reality, no battle plan survives contact with the enemy. We're going to continuously update the plan as we go through life. So those are my 2 big philosophies for you to life. Whatever you have today is not limited to what you're having. And you do design everything in your life except the consequences. And that means you can have bad results when you did the right thing, but the onus is still on you to adapt, improvise, and overcome. Moving on. I just wanted to say a little bit about how much we are seeing the reality of this happen and how much we've seen it over the last 2 decades, especially. The people who most, and I mean most, need to be distrusted are the ones that use the word trust the most with the implication of trust me. I want you to think about, I think it was James Earl Jones, the voice for that. The most trusted name in news. That should have been your clue all the way back then. That was like 25, 30 years ago, right? Can't trust CNN. Now, some of you say, well, that's because they are an offshoot of the CIA like all media. True. But they're the ones that chose to pay a lot of money to have a guy with a famous voice say, the most trusted name in news. When somebody says, you can trust me, you can trust me, I immediately, the hackles on my neck go up. The person who is best trusted is the person that uses the word the least. They just do. And here's how I trust people. I trust people, 1, to act in their own self-interest. 2, I trust people to continue the pattern of behavior that they have demonstrated over time. Right? That's what I trust. So people would say something like, well, surely you don't trust Joe Biden. I completely trust Joe Biden to be Joe Biden. A whacked out, retread liberal who's losing his faculties. I trust him to be that. I trust Kamala Harris to be an incompetent, cackling hyena that doesn't have a clue what she's doing. I trust that. I trust a rattlesnake to behave like a rattlesnake, and I trust a rat snake to behave like a rat snake. Hence, I will pick up a rat snake barehanded, and the only thing I'm worried about is a mild abrasion or getting shit on, and I'm not going to barehand pick up a rattlesnake because I trust the rattlesnake to bite me and envenomate me because that's what rattlesnakes do. So the rattlesnake doesn't say, trust me, right? The rattlesnake demonstrates, if you don't trust me, you're going to wish you did. I know that makes, like, what do you mean? What do you shouldn't trust? No, I do trust the rattlesnake. I trust the rattlesnake when the rattlesnake goes and coils up and puts its neck in an S and arches back and puffs itself up and makes it look as big as possible. I trust. He's not full of shit. He's saying, dude, leave me alone, or your ass better have brought a snake hook or a clamp in a bag or something. Like, you either know how to deal with me or you're going to the ER and probably the ICU and you might die. If nothing else, you're going to have some real pain and some bad necrosis and a bad freaking couple of days. And you're going to find out what crowfab is, and you don't want to. He's saying all that with. So when somebody says, trust me, what they're actually saying is, ignore my behavior. Ignore my behavior. I've occasionally made a mistake, I think, in saying my brand is trust. And the truth is, the only reason I've ever said that is other people have said it. And trying not to be Volvo, right? I'm a student of marketing. And I'm like, if you're a smart marketer, when your market says something positive of you, you embrace it, whether you want it to be your market or not, right? So Volvo, back in the late 70s into the early 80s, became safety. Because Volvo built really safe vehicles, especially compared to the shit that was on the road at the time. And people just looked at, the person that was safety conscious said, well, of all these giant metal machines running around, let's look at all the accidents and which ones have the highest survival rate. And ding, 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 it was Volvo. And in the mid-early 70s especially, it wasn't even close. There was a wide gap before all these new safety mechanisms and crumple zones and shit came into being. Like, Volvo just was safety. But Volvo didn't want to be safety. Volvo was like a dad vehicle in the 70s. Kind of square shaped, kind of boring, came in boring colors. But they thought they were cool. Like all dads with tucked in shirts and New Balances think they're cool. They thought they were cool. So they wanted to be a cool car. So when the market said, you're the brand of safety, they said, no, we're not. Eventually, they accepted it, and they sold a shitload of cars, even though they were boring in Manila. And until the other manufacturers caught up with safety protocols, they owned that space. So the only reason I've ever used, like, my brand is trust when it comes to, like, what I recommend is because somebody else did it. Now, why did somebody else do it? I don't know, probably 14 years of what I've done. And that's not trust Jack Spirko. That's just trust me to do the things I've done for 14 years. And that's when people, because we're going to get Elon Musk here in a second, right? So when people say, do you trust Elon Musk? If the way you mean it, no. But I don't trust me that way. I don't trust any one person. I certainly don't trust a company that's run by people who are more interested in the success of the company than the people the company serves. I certainly don't trust a media that's in the pocket of the government and the oligarchs. Of course I don't. But I do trust CNN. I trust CNN to behave the way CNN has behaved up till now. And I will never stop trusting that they'll do that until they have a long enough track record of doing something else. Now, what do I trust implicitly? I trust math. That's why if you want to win me over with social media, put it on an immutable, uneditable, unchangeable blockchain. We'll get to this in a second. And if people don't want to see a thing, create filters that they can toggle on and off and let them decide how much gets filtered. But do nothing to the other side. Then I'll trust it because I trust math. I don't trust people. I do trust people if we mean it my way. I trust that if you give a person a power that benefits them to use it, sooner or later they will use it. The only reason they don't use it is they fear retaliation or the consequence of doing it outweighs the benefit of doing it. The negative consequence outweighs the positive consequence. We haven't nuked people yet, direct conventional nuclear weapons, because we have nuked people. The Gulf War was a nuclear war. When you take depleted plutonium projectiles and shoot them at people in vehicles and structures, I call that a nuclear war. But in the conventional mushroom cloud sense, we haven't nuked anybody yet, not because we're such good guys, we'd never nuke anybody. Because the consequence is, one, what happens when we do it, even if we're not retaliated on directly. And two, what happens if we are retaliated on it directly. But I believe if the United States to this day was still the sole power that held the capacity to use a nuclear weapon, we would have used it more than twice. We would have. Sooner or later, we'd have gotten into a position. In fact, we almost did. Most people don't know this. Do you know what ended the Korean conflict? Truman telling the North Koreans, I'm about ready to end this one way or another. Now, whether he was willing to do it or not, I don't know. But assuming he was, at that time, Truman believed the United States could deploy another nuclear weapon and get away with it. So he was willing to put it on the table. At this point, it's untenable. That doesn't mean it'll never happen, but it's untenable because the concept is you nuke, they nuke. So the consequence creates a level of trust. And I think it's one more thing on trust before we go on. Depleted uranium is not harmful to humans, says Adam. Adam, I would like you to get an ounce of depleted plutonium in small ground up powder form, and I'd like you to eat it, and then I'll believe you. Anyway, moving on. Let's talk about Jack was wrong. Dun, dun, dun. And Elon Musk not only bought Twitter, but the change is already evident. How's the change evident? Let's start with that. So first of all, let's start with Jack was wrong, right? Most of the time, when I'm wrong, not only am I willing to admit it, I'm happy about it because most of the things I predict are not good. There's things I've been wrong about that I'm happier about than this, but I'm not unhappy about this. Like, this has worked out. I never thought that the board would accept the offer, and I didn't think the offer was high enough. And a tactical error that I made, and I did adjust in the interim on this when I looked at things more closely, was how low Twitter's cash flow is. So when I looked at the offer, I thought, shit, Twitter's stock could be worth that much next year anyway, like if they don't do anything. When I looked at earnings and shit like that, I went, no, wow. You know, it turns out when you're like a quadrillionaire like Elon, you have access to pretty smart people. When you say you want to do something, they're pretty good at putting a valuation on it. He got the number right. He got the number exactly where it needed to be to set a trap. So good for Elon on that. Do you trust Elon? Not what I said. Good for Elon on this because the memes are already worth it. It's unbelievable to me. The memes, the triggering of the left and the left showing themselves is already worth it. There's already enough good done. Seeing people who claim to be for democracy shrieking at how bad it is that both sides in a discussion can be heard because it's a threat to democracy, and them completely stripping off their clothes and showing their naked ass and who they are, that's worth it. And the memes. Oh, God bless you, meme lords. I aspire to be considered worthy among you as a meme lord myself. Beautiful, beautiful memes. But I have to say something else. What I didn't think is that there'd be any real tangible changes to Twitter, especially right away. Well, a whole shitload of people who have been thrown off of Twitter have had their accounts reactivated. That's good. I'm glad. I'm happy. But where I was really wrong, and again, I'm happy about this, is it seems like some shadow bans have been lifted. So I got on Twitter a long time ago, and I quickly built up to about 15,000 followers. Here we are over a decade later, and I have about 15,000 followers on Twitter. And when I post something and I look at the Twitter analytics, I'll see that maybe 75, sometimes 30 people see it. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. And my growth on Twitter has been inconsequential. Now, I haven't pushed it for a long time because of this. So if you go to my Get Social page, you won't see a link to my Twitter profile. So I'm not using my leverage to build Twitter. But just organically, I do post stuff there. You'd think I'd get some followers. Since last night, I post something, a decent number of people, a couple 1,500,000 people see it all of a sudden. I'm getting DMs from people. Dude, I didn't know you were on Twitter. I ain't seen you on Twitter forever. Interesting. And I'm getting, not a huge number, but several new followers an hour. I'm not promoting it. I'm not like, hey, I'm back on Twitter, guys. Come follow me there. It's just the organic pool. I'm not important on Twitter. I'm seeing a change for me. Does it last? I don't know. What do I think about Musk as a person? I think he's a usurous bastard. I think he's flat out abusive. And I need to explain what I mean by abusive. I had some apologists say that's just his autistic personality, being verbally abusive to people. Never said he was verbally abusive to people. Actually, I've never heard Elon Musk raise his voice. Of course, all I've ever seen of Elon is public exposure. So I'm sure it happens, right? It's this very calm demeanor, etc. But I do have somebody who I know very, very well who's worked directly with Elon Musk. And when I say abusive, I don't mean verbally abusive. And I don't mean physically abusive. I don't mean he's walking around a gigafactory punching people in the face. I mean that he's abusive of people with his power, that he doesn't care what happens to his people. He doesn't care how hard they're worked. He doesn't care what lives he destroys. He's just an abusive bastard. He's a sociopath. He's a sociopath. Now, sociopaths sometimes do some good shit, and I hope he does some good shit here. But he's also a guy developing implants to put into your brain to control how much you eat and when. And if you can do that, then you can control, like what you eat, if you eat. Maybe you just shut it off and you starve yourself. Like, if you can do that with Neuralink, what are your limits to what you could do to a person? Now, I know what you think, but it's all voluntary. So you go out and you buy a Tesla. You piss off Elon Musk. Doesn't want you driving that Tesla anymore. He can shut it off. Hasn't done it, but there's a whole lot of Russians that own Teslas. Russians that have nothing to do with this war in Ukraine. They're just people like you and me going about their meager lives, right? Actually, I guess if you have a Tesla in Russia, your life's not quite so meager, but they're just working day every day. Believe it or not, other countries have people just like you. Thank you, Mike, for this $25 super chat. Thank you so much, sir. Right? Other people in other countries, even ones you don't think are great countries, are just like you. They work up every day. They bust their ass. They take care of their wife and their kids. They really are. And so that guy went out and worked his ass off in whatever there was of the Russian economy, managed to buy a Tesla. If Elon Musk wants to totally throw in with the globalists on this, literally Tesla can tell you where every one of their vehicles is because of how they're designed in the world right now. And they can say, if the vehicles in Russia don't run, and they can push kill switch. You know that kill switch you're all worried about? Could 2025, all the cars are going to come with them? The Teslas already have that. That's how they can sell you the self-driving technology before it exists, because they know where your car is, and when they have the self-driving technology, they just push a button, and all of a sudden you have the self-driving capability. If they can have your Tesla drive itself, they can have it not drivable. Or if you can make a car self-driving, what else can you do with it? What else can you do with it? This car can only go to these places. If it goes outside of these lines, it shuts off. Or the car takes over and takes you home. You think I'm making this? No, all this already exists. But you buy it and you own it. Ask someone that owns a state-of-the-art John Deere tractor about owning everything in the tractor. They'll tell you you're nuts. John Deere owns the code, and if you alter it, they'll sue you. There were some mining operations that fell on hard times in Australia, and Cat shut them off because they weren't being paid for it. Right? So you got this giant machine digging this giant hole to pull the rare earth elements out of the ground for Elon Musk batteries for his environmentally friendly car. I'm not even saying it's wrong. I'm just saying there's the reality. And then that company hits hard times. They don't pay the bill. And Caterpillar just goes, boop. When you pay us, we'll turn your vehicle back on. Okay. Now you're going to go buy a Neuralink so you can lose weight. Not me, man. Not me. When I was really young, I used to say, not the kid. I'll bring that back. Not the kid. I'm not getting that in my head. I'm not doing that. Right? I'd have to have some sort of like open source assurance that I'm in control. Anybody here watching Picard season 2? The Borg Queen and the Doctor? Right? I'm in control. I steer the ship. Not anymore. Running with the shadows of the night. You're going to have to look it up for yourself if you don't know. Surrender all your dreams to me tonight. Right? There you go. That's Neuralink. But what if you can trust Elon Musk to not do that? If there's a technology, it will be used. If there's a technology, the ability to use it will fall into the hands of other people. You're developing the technology for total global enslavement. That's what I think Elon Musk is doing, even if it's not his intentions. And I'm not sure it's not his intentions. I don't know. He doesn't have, there's a track record there, and there's good and bad in it. There's not enough for me to make that determination. But I believe that if you're as smart as the guy is, and you're developing this tech without implicit safeguard, which I have not seen, that you know the evil you're unleashing. I just see Anakin Skywalker. You were supposed to be the chosen one. Turns into a half human, half robot that wants to rule outer space. That's what I see. I'm sorry. But I do think Twitter will be better, at least for a while. Now, somebody asked me a question. Go more practical here for a bit as we wrap up. Choosing between aquatics and aquaponics. Which one should I do if I'm interested in both? The easy answer is aquatics. Because I can do aquatics, which just basically means I have a bigger pond, more water, I have more things going on. And anything that I would do with aquaponics, I can implement into aquatics. I can take a great big pot full of dirt and I can make basically a static wicking bed, and I can just sit it in the pond on some blocks and grow anything I want in it. Most of the stuff that we do in aquaponics that is rafting is, lettuces and things like that. They don't actually need that much nutrient. And even just in a decent pond, I could probably do rafting. I might have to do a few little things, but I can make it work. And I just put out a video a couple days ago about ebb and flow in aquaponics. And if we set up a big pond and throw some ebb and flow beds in it, which are the ones where the water fills up and then dumps out and then fills up and dumps out, usually with a siphon, I do it with a timer. In year 1 or 2, it's not going to look really great. If you try to grow nutrient requiring plants like peppers, tomatoes, etc., cucumber, they're not going to get enough because an aquaponics system is overstocked and overfiltered. That's what makes it aquaponics. We do a pond, it's almost impossible to overstock it and then overfilter it. Like if we put in a 5,000 gallon pond, the amount of filtration we need for backyard purposes, right? Not commercial. It's unbelievable. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But on the ebb and flow, check the video out. I'll put a link in the audio notes. I literally pull back the material in my ebb and flow bed, and the ebb and flow bed hasn't run for 5-6 months, and there's soil in it. Aquaculture and aquaponics both build soil over time. That's how that bed can become really productive. But putting in a couple 1,000-gallon pond requires space, materials, and money, one way or another. If you don't have space, materials, and money, but you want to do this anyway, then you can go out and buy a 150-gallon Rubbermaid, throw 2 50-gallon Rubbermaids on top of with 2 pieces of 8-foot 4x4 across it. You don't even need a screw or a bolt, a few bulkheads, a pump, and a timer. You can go down to the park pond, catch 50 bluegills, or better, in my opinion, for a system this size, go down to Petco, spend $9 on 109-cent goldfish, throw them in there, and within a few weeks, you'll have enough of a circulation cycle going on, you can start growing food in it. Right? So it depends on you. If you can do either, I would go with a pond-based aquatic system, and straight out of the gate, I would make the biggest pond that I can. And then you can infinitely expand all the peripherals around it, including things that you shut down during the winter. If I wanted to do it and I didn't have that option, I would go ahead and do aquaponics. The caveat, man, there is a lot of shit to learn. There is so much to learn, and learning on a small scale is better than learning on a big scale. That's why I'm putting together my aquatics course. Like, people love my Miyagi ponds, which are these timber frame ponds built out of 4x4s. I'm going to tell you right now, my biggest one, I would not build it the way it's built right now. It could be 20 years. It could be 10 years. It could be 5. It is going to have a catastrophic failure at some point. So I wouldn't go building it that way straight out of the gate. There's ways it could be better, and I'll talk about those in the course. And I have videos out that already do it. I give away everything. Of course, it's just assembling it in a logical framework and an order with testing and things like that. So then again, start out small to a degree. But this is what I've learned about ponds over the years. A pond itself, no one ever says, I wish it was smaller. And there's one big rule to follow with ponds, if you can. And the reason I haven't is I can't, because of the rock base. Go in the ground. Go in the ground. Dig a hole. Go in the ground. The closer you can get the top of your pond to at grade, the better. And think about it. There are no ponds in nature that naturally maintain that are above grade. Right? You never walk through a field. It's all flat. Then you see a hill come up like this, go 10 feet above the ground, and make what looks like some kind of like erected crater. And then there's a pond in there, and somehow it magically stays full. That's not how ponds work in nature. They have to have catchment. So the only reason when you see my ponds above grade that they're above grade is that they have to be. So if you can dig a hole, put your pond in the ground, even if you want to come up above grade, take most of the actual water volume below ground. Kind of like my duck pond, but go deeper than I could. And everything gets easier. And then the pond functions like a pond, and it builds more of an ecosystem. We'll get more into that in the course, which will be released this summer. Right now, there's 14 chapters in the course, and I am building chapter 3. So it is happening. It's not just an idea. Next up, real quick, I just wanted to finish today with my belief here. Homesteading is the new counterculture. Guy who I find really entertaining, and I agree with a lot and disagree with a lot, is Paul Joseph Watson. And I remember he did a video quite a while ago, and it was called Conservatism is the New Counterculture. I disagree. Homesteading is the new counterculture. Homesteading is the demographic who has said, with a unified, loud, thunderous voice. And I mean a unified, loud, thunderous voice. I am not participating in your new normal. I'm not doing it. The homesteaders, from the little urban homesteads to the great big couple 100-acre and bigger grazing operation homesteads, from the family farms to the farmsteads, everything in between. From the Jean-Paul Fortiers, in Canada, that guy that are running 2-acre market garden-based systems, to Bill the hillbilly somewhere in Arkansas, God bless you, who has 10 acres up in the mountains and lives on deer meat and trout and everything in between. We're not doing it. You can take your Beyond Burger and you can shove it up your ass. Anybody remember the movie Independence Day? Randy Quaid's character at the end when he sacrifices himself by flying into the mothership and exploding it. Do you remember what he said? In the words of my generation, up yours. That's actually what defines the counterculture. The counterculture doesn't seek to change the culture. It tells the current culture to go screw itself. And then it goes on with its own life, its own way. You know, the hippies in the late 60s that were protesting the war and all, the biggest act of rebellion they had is that they went out and lived their lives their way. Pot's illegal? Yeah, we don't care. We're going to use it anyway. You want us to wait till we're married to have sex? Yeah, we're not doing that. Now, again, actions have consequences. And if you overdo something, you can end up with a negative consequence. But a lot of them ended up with really positive consequences. But the key was they just went and did things the way that they wanted them to be done. Like the modern hippies, the reason I have a problem with them is they want you to do what they say you're supposed to do. And they want to use the force of the state to make you do it. That's that's not counterculture. That's current culture. I can't think of a group of people as diverse, unified by one thing, but diverse in many other things, that have said to the system to go screw itself more than homesteaders. Can you tell me who? Give me another one if it's not homesteaders. Give me another one where, because I can go find you a homesteader that not just is a Biden voter, they still have an Al Gore sticker on their Volvo. Okay? Right? They do. They still have a Gore sticker. Right? They still have an I'm with her shirt. They haven't given up yet. Doesn't matter where they're at. And they're homesteading. And I can go find you somebody with the red MAGA hat, has a homestead. I can go find you anarchists like me. There's a lot of us with homesteads, lots of libertarians. I can find you, I mean, literally, you can find real Nazis that have homesteads. Not exactly proud of it, but I'm just trying to make a point. There's no thing that says more to the establishment, stick it in your ass, we ain't doing it, than homesteading does, right? We are the ones who are saying no to everything. Well, we're going to make you eat Beyond Burger. Well, I'm not eating Beyond Burger. Well, you're not going to have any meat. Well, first of all, I'm just going to go on about my life, and if I want a ribeye and the store has a ribeye I want, I'm going to buy it, and I'm not worried about you. But my neighbor raises cows, so I'll eat his cow. I'm okay with that. I'll go shoot a deer. You can go screw yourself. I have fish in my ponds in my backyard. I have chickens. I have ducks. I have geese. I have a gun. I have a bow. You're not taking meat away from me. But yet I can show you a vegan that basically feels the same way. They're like, I'm not eating Beyond Burger. I'm not eating fake soy meal crap full of chemicals and shit with beet juice in it to make it look like blood. I'm going to grow my own vegan backyard place. Fine. I have no problem with that person. As long as they don't try to take away my shit, I'm not going to get in their way. That's what a counterculture is bound by. They're bound by a simple idea that says no to the current power apparatus. So I think that would be a good t-shirt, and I'm not in the t-shirt business. So anybody wants to go nuts with it. Homesteading is the new counterculture. Let's take a look at some of the starred stuff. Ecomouse says, Jack, gun ownership can lead to an addiction to reloading, smiling, and good cheer. Be careful as it can get addictive. Isn't that the point? Isn't that the point? Do you know what my addiction is? Stacking sats. I bought enough guns. I'm good. Then I lost them all in the boating accident, and I'm so into Bitcoin I can't afford new guns, government. So just, But stacking sats. When somebody says something really negative about Bitcoin, I go buy $50. When somebody says Bitcoin went down to $37,000, it crashed, I go buy $50. It went down to $36,000, I go buy $100. I start thinking about buying a shit coin. I'm like, let me go buy $50 worth of Bitcoin and see if I still want to buy that shit coin. I said it's the same thing. Good point, Ecomouse. Mike says, why is it generally accepted by and paid stackers who are typically libertarians that physical sovereign coins, e.g. silver eagles, have a higher premium? Is it a result of state propaganda? Okay, so I guess you're saying not stat sackers, Mike, and correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to switch back over to the live feed if you're still here, and you clear this up if I'm getting it wrong. I don't think you're talking about stackers as in stacking sats like I just said. People that stack silver are okay with and willing to pay a premium for silver eagles over generic rounds, I think is what you're asking. The big reason is that's what the market does. That's what the market does. So if I buy a silver eagle, the premium I pay remains with the coin when I sell a silver eagle. That's why it's accepted. Now, why does it exist? The chief reason it exists is two reasons. One, it is a slightly higher level of security because it is considered U.S. currency. Now, it's obviously that a silver eagle is worth more than the dollar stamped on it, but a U.S. silver eagle is considered U.S. coinage. And there are people who make coins that have less than an ounce or almost no silver in them at all that are really difficult to tell just by looking and feeling. There are counterfeits. And if you counterfeit a generic silver round and say it's silver, you've committed fraud, but you haven't committed counterfeiting. The state, pretty hard on counterfeiters. They like to counterfeit money. They call it fiat, right? But they don't like you to do it. And you're risking going to prison for a long time if you counterfeit. So one justification in a Silver Eagle carrying more value is the stamp of the government saying, if this is fake, there's a bigger problem for the person that did it. The other thing is there's a specific tax advantage because it is coinage. I think it's 30 ounces a year that you can trade with no tax consequences. That's another reason. Mike, I think that's what you were asking. Adam says, without public schools, children don't get to socialize with other children. I don't know if you're saying that like tongue in cheek or if you're saying that seriously. If you're saying that seriously, you're a dumbass, which I don't think you are. I think I recognize your name. If you're saying that facetiously, fine. And that's how I'm going to take it because my grandkids socialize with other children all the time. My grandson is a really great baseball player. He's pitcher for his team. He pitches every other game because they have rules about how often you can pitch so you don't hurt your arm. He has a lot of great friends. My granddaughter is involved in cheerleading and gymnastics. They live in a neighborhood, so they have kids around them that they're friendly with. My granddaughter today was very excited about the fact she's going to a kiddo's birthday party that she does gymnastics with. So either you meant that facetiously, like I'm taking it, or you meant that seriously, and then you're just, well, Bonhoeffer's theory of stupidity. Anyway, Tom says, Sal Mayweather, can I buy a 3D printer using Lightning? I bet you can. I bet you're serious. I bet you if Sal knew, he probably doesn't, but if Sal knew that all he has to do is download Exodus and click on Lightning and send you an invoice, he'd sell you one in 35 seconds for Lightning. I bet you he would. Good job, Tom. Hanging Laundry says off topic, recommended natural, less invasive beehive systems. I don't know what I must have clicked that by accident because you didn't put it in all caps. I don't know. But I will take this for a second. I get all the time. Jack, do you own bees? Jack, do you own bees? Jack, what happened to your bees? If you know I used to own bees. I didn't enjoy it. And this is something I want to say because of what I said about homesteading. Homesteading has become a lot like permaculture. Oh, you're a permaculturist? Where is your herb spiral? I don't want a freaking herb spiral. Well, you don't have permaculture without an herb spiral. Where's your food forest? Well, I don't have the space for a true food forest, so I didn't. Oh, that's not permaculture. Where are your swales, right? Like this idea that if you're in permaculture, you have to do a certain specific group of techniques. So homesteader, where's your bees? I don't have bees. Oh, you're not a homesteader. And I don't think that Hanging Laundry means it that way, but there is kind of that underlying thing. And this is where, I don't care about individuals thinking that from their judgmental thrones because they're usually people that didn't do anything anyway. And again, I'm not picking on Hanging. I don't think that's where he's coming from, but I see it happen, right? The problem actually is the person that feels like they've somehow failed. The person that makes, I want a homestead, so I need to check all these boxes, right? If you decide beekeeping isn't for you, let somebody else keep bees. Start networking. Find beekeepers local to your area and work with them. Find out what you can do for them and what they can do for you. No one can do everything, and life is too short. Yesterday, we talked an awful lot about our life force and our dash and how valuable that is. And to me, see, like part of what makes me hate the state so much is taxes are the state's fangs, and the state is a vampire sucking your life force. If I take half your earnings, I'm taking 50% of your life force away from you. So I have a big problem with that, right? And you can have more, you can actually do this to yourself. You can actually damage yourself. Your life's too short to do things you hate. So I got bees. I wasn't afraid of them, but it's hot here. I wasn't comfortable working with just a veil and getting stung. I know a lot of beekeepers who felt that way. They only get stung very infrequently, but they got stung enough that they develop, either you develop a complete immunity or a serious sensitivity where it becomes dangerous. I didn't want to do that. I didn't like sweating. I didn't like opening up the hives once every 2 to 4 weeks and checking them out. I looked at the whole thing and I thought, this is more work than the value I'm getting from it. So I gave my bees away. And, there's another, I actually liked keeping quail and I liked eating them, but my wife won't eat them. So I would do all that work just for me. So I stopped keeping quail. People ask me why I don't have rabbits. The answer to that one is I just don't need one more thing to do just to have rabbit meat. I have a 22. Now, the person that says, I love rabbits, Jack, and you could get more meat out of like 3 does and 1 buck than you can get out of a herd of meat goats. Dude, rabbits are the best. I completely endorse your choice, and I completely think you're right. But unless you're going to come raise my rabbits for me, there won't be rabbits at 9 Mile Farm anytime soon. It's one more thing to do. I have fish. You might be like, Jack, dude, I don't want to dig holes and deal with pumps and sludge and algae. And I completely endorse your decision to not have fish. I completely endorse my decision that would allow me right now, if I felt like it, as soon as I'm done here, I was like, you know what sounds good for lunch? Fish tacos. Go throw a piece of salted shrimp on one of my rods, toss it in one of my ponds, and 15 minutes later, be frying up some fish. We all have to make decisions about what we want in our lives. And if we're not going to do that, we're wasting our life force. So that's why I probably clicked that one. Prep to adventure. Could a change in Twitter moderation hurt alt tech adoption? Keep everyone content on the existing big tech platform. Not only do I think that's possible, I will always say what could be the other side here. Elon Musk, out of altruism, combined with his own money plus raise, tendered $43 or $46 billion to buy Twitter. A man that's made close to $1 trillion in net wealth in his life. Everything he's ever done has eventually become profitable. Because Tesla's not making any money. All of a sudden, Tesla's like, there's a pattern to getting a company off the ground of that size before you start making money. Has come out and said, I don't care about the economics here. Now, I don't care who you are. Let's say $10 billion personally is a lot of money. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money to put into something and not expect a return out of it, especially if you are a guy, to be fair to Elon, is a very good entrepreneur. Like, it's not likely. Because when I think about, well, what could I do with $40 billion if I want return on my money? Or even if I want to do good, I could do more good with $40 billion spread across 1,000 entities than I can do by buying Twitter with it. So what might be the ulterior motive? You take a perceived outsider, Elon, just saying, and then he goes out and he's a champion of the people, and you save a dying platform. Because the rats have been leaving the ship, and the rats in this case aren't the rats. The rats are the ones that stayed behind. The rats felt like, we have a monopoly, this is great. But the rats were beginning to look around and go, well, if there's no passengers and no cooks and no kitchen galley, what are we going to eat? So I think the potential is that alternative platforms like Gab, MeWe, Float, Mastodon, etc., are beginning that, Parler, until they got nuked by the big conglomeration, there should be an antitrust lawsuit and an antitrust, state level case against Google, Facebook, Twitter, Amazon Web Services, Apple, etc., for what they did to Parler. There won't be. There will be no consequence for it. But Parler was really beginning to explode. Now Trump's got Truth Social, which I think is doomed to failure. I think even the Trump tards don't want to go to Truth Social. I see them on Gab all the time. Like, they love the Orange Man, but they're like, screw Truth, whatever. Like, screw Truth. They censor over there, whatever. And you're like, you've been telling me about QAnons and the Orange Man coming back in October, like for 3 Octobers now. Like, whatever, but they don't want to go there. But yet it is a thing. And so what if Elon buys Twitter, reforms Twitter in a way that's believable? Because let's say Pagua and all of the woke ilk at Twitter had come out and said, you know what? We've seen the light. We have to allow discussion with things we disagree with. What if they even fired him and they put a new guy out of the woke crowd in there that was unknown or known as woke? And he said, I'm woke, but I don't want to go broke. So we're going to, like, no one would trust it, right? But if you have the outlier come in and suddenly come up with $46 billion, you just wonder if that's part of the plan. And I'm not saying it is, but it's always possible that it's part of the plan. K-Bong says, will Elon open the doors to transparency of tweeters' actions? That sounds like, will he start allowing doxing of people? I don't think so, and I don't think that's a good thing. I think that, like, for instance, the Twitter account Libs of TikTok was doxed by the mainstream woke media, and that woman's life was terrorized, and all she was doing was reposting videos of people. She wasn't adding any commentary. She just was saying, oh, here's the teacher saying they want to groom your children in Florida. Maybe that's why this happened. She didn't even say that. She just took the person's video and made it visible to more people. That's it. And they attacked her. And I'm not cool with that. What I do hope Elon will do, there's a bunch of things I hope Elon will do with Twitter, even if I don't trust him. I think it is better overall, at least for a time, is allow verification for all. In fact, I think, like, if I was running Twitter, what I would do, one of the things I would do, I would create a verification system. And that verification system wouldn't be a one-time fee. It would be a monthly fee, $3 a month. And if you were verified, then not only would you get a blue check or whatever we did for that, you would see no advertisements at all, unless you chose to. Do you want to see ads? Yes or no? No. Okay, you don't have to. You're paying us, and we probably don't make $3 a user by putting stupid ads in their face anyway. So all the losers would have to receive ads, and then all of the premium members would only see the ads that they want to see. Like, I only want to see ads about these subjects, which would actually make my advertising more valuable to my user and to my advertiser. And it would make me first accountable to my users. That's exactly how I run TSP. That's why MSB, okay? That's why MSB is the way I monetize the show. That's why I make 10% of my income from sponsors and 90% from my listeners. Because who am I most concerned with? You. You're the ones that can cancel me. All my sponsors could tomorrow get threatened by some Twitter mod or whatever and say, Jack, we're out. I'd be like, okay, fine, bye. I'll go get new ones. Wouldn't even slow me down. I'm not happy. I'd be really shocked that some of them would do it. But if they did, so let's say that sponsor XYZ, because I don't want to put anybody's name into this, phoned me up and said, Jack, you know, we've had a great relationship for you all. You sold a lot of product for us. But we don't like what you're saying about the war in Ukraine. We have a Ukraine flag in our profile. We want you to put one in your profile too. And we want you to toe the line. We're going to pull our sponsorship. Now, if they're paying me like $50 million, like, you know, Mr. Rogan, and I'm not putting them down, I'm just saying it's the truth. Even me, I might be like, shit, I don't want to lose $50 million. Maybe I'm going to just go along and get along. I might still make the right decision. It's going to be very difficult to do. But if I got a sponsor paying me a couple $1,000s a month, and they're a fraction of my annual income, well, see ya. Don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out. Which means you can trust that I'm going to tell you what I think. That's what you can trust from me. And Mike made a comment with this. Oh, there it is. I didn't see Mike's comment. I just wanted to thank him again. Mike sent me a super chat. He said, got to get back to work on the stead. Keep making good shows, Jack. I starred that one because I figured if he super chatted me, he deserved to have his comment heard, but I guess it really wasn't anything for me to answer or whatever. Oh, look, we have some spammers. Let's go ahead and nuke those. Block user. Okay, so they're gone. So it's interesting this time. The spammers came in while I was on the starred stuff, so I didn't see them, so they got to be in there a little bit longer. But I've been getting a lot more spam on YouTube lately. I'm getting a lot of the straight up porn spammers, and I'm getting a lot of the people that come in and go, really great video, man. I really liked what you had to say about Bitcoin. And usually it's an episode where I didn't even talk about Bitcoin. I guess my channel is known as a Bitcoin channel in the spammer space now. And then you get like this chain of people coming in I like Bitcoin too, and I talked to Mr. Smith on WhatsApp. Here's how you find him. Thanks to him, I made 6 total Bitcoin in the past 3 weeks. I'm so blessed. I know Mr. Smith too, and he got this whole line of assholes, and people are like, wow, that must suck. No, it's great. It's great. Because I start at the bottom, not the top, and I go ban from channel, ban from channel, ban from channel. So it lets me ban a whole block of assholes all on one thing. But that's what that is. And so if you ever see that, I think this audience, is outside of Bonhoeffer's theory of stupidity enough to know better. But that is a scam. That is a complete scam. Anyway, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. I really want you to think about my opening story. Onboarding Bitcoiners and onboarding new gun owners. This is what I'd like to ask you. Do one for me. Do one person in either world, and I think you'll make a positive change for the better in the world. I believe that. That's actually why I talked about it today. Again, I don't remember exactly which podcast, which guest made me get on that tangent, but when I was listening to Peter McCormack, and he was talking about, they think we're all code bros or whatever. I was like, yeah, they do. That's what people think. And that's why I drew the comparison to gun ownership. But the bigger thing for me, because this guest said something like, well, there's so many people that are basically like, you're not really a Bitcoiner, man, unless you're on the keto diet or your carnivore diet or whatever. Like, no, there isn't. I've never heard anybody say that. Like, you have to be a carnivore if you want to be a real Bitcoiner. You have to be a full-on libertarian if you want to be. No, and I don't even think there is anything. I think there's the appearance of that, but there's a reason, a real legitimate reason. That's what I wanted to completely finish with today. The reason is the Venn diagram I was talking about the last couple episodes. You get somebody into Bitcoin, they're going to think more like a libertarian. I'm not saying they're going to go all the way, but they're going to start having an internal struggle. McCormack says he's a left-leaning European believer of liberal democracy, but I feel like I'm the Emperor Palpatine, right? I can feel the conflict within you. Let go and embrace the orange side, right? Like you can hear the conflict, and you can hear the guy moving slowly on the spectrum. And what I've noticed is there's an incredible overlap of libertarian, anarcho, homesteader, carnivore diet. And it's not just like, if it was just in my community, I'd say, well, that's the shit I talk about. So obviously I'm going to drive away people that aren't, I'm going to have a primary demographic in that kind of piece of the Venn diagram. But I see it across the board. I remember listening to the Sailor series with Robert Breedlove. It was 13 interviews with Michael Saylor. And at one point, he said something like, you want to lose weight? That's easy. Eat less sugar, eat mostly meat. And he just went on from there. I'm like, holy shit, Saylor's keto. What a surprise. He is a small government libertarian. He's not an anarchist, right? He's a true red, white, and blue believer. That's fine. But boy, I guarantee you that man has moved on the spectrum partially because of the discovery of Bitcoin. Same thing with guns. You get somebody into gun culture, and I mean that in the greatest way possible, they're going to move toward liberty. You move somebody toward keto diet, carnivore diet, eating true nutritional health, and they get the results we were talking about yesterday. You can't lie to them anymore. It's over. Well, that's going to make you fat, and it's going to make you sick, and it's going to give you a heart attack. And the guy's like, dude, I used to be 321 pounds. I'm sitting here, I'm 205. You're wrong. And they can yell and scream and shout and scream, science, my science, my science. And the person's like, don't know what to tell you, man. That person's naturally going to start questioning things. If there's only one thing you take from this show, question everything. With that, I'll be back with you tomorrow with a great interview. Those of you who know expert counsel Sean Mills, you'll be hearing from him about what it actually takes to go off grid tomorrow.